Hi everyone and welcome back. A few months ago I tried a badass sounding EverSolo DAC Z8, and about a month ago I tried a Zido Neo Alpha DAC streamer and music server, which impressed me deeply. Very few know about this, but EverSolo is a sister company to Zido, which focuses mostly on audiophile-centered gear. And if you look closely, there's a striking similarity between Zido Neo Alpha and EverSolo's newest DMP-A6 streamer, DAC, and music server. The best part about this one is that most of the audio features found on Zido Neo Alpha were moved in here, while dropping the price point as much as possible, going from $3,000 to $860 US, making it the most feature-packed you need to be featured around here, below $1,000. And I think it's the right time to check it out. It looks like an EverSolo DAC Z8 with a bigger screen but with a smaller footprint because it no longer has a headphone amplifier or video player functionality. Naturally, it was milled on a CNC machine with this beautiful matte black paint, which should save it from a few scratches. It uses wide metallic teeth. They even have thick rubber pads that will absorb vibrations coming from within its electronics. So far, this is the biggest LCD that I've seen on any DAC and streamer. It has a 6-inch touchscreen, which offers a stunning first impression, especially in a stereo setup. It has great viewing angles. I believe it's an IPS panel, but please don't expect those inky blacks of OLED panels because that is not going to happen. Its UI, it's complex but intuitive. It even has a dedicated control app for iOS and Android devices, which works as a remote control for the unit, as you won't find a physical remote in the package. As for controls, you have a massive 6-inch touchscreen and a volume knob to its right, which makes it a clean but also sexy looking unit. On its back, besides the usual RCA and XLR analog outputs, which offer a variable or fixed voltage output, and a couple of digital inputs as USB Type-C, optical and coaxial, you have a few digital outputs as well, just in case you want to hook it up to third-party DACs and use its internal streamer. For that you have an USB audio output, and optical and coaxial output. There's a secondary USB Type-A port, which will help you with offline music playback, accepting USB flash drives and external SSDs. And finally, there's a gigabit LAN port, just in case you want maximum performance out of its streamer. The app itself is fantastic to work with, and simply put, this is basically the nicest app that I've seen on any streamer and DAC. It's flawless, it loads instantly, everything works really fast. So I cannot complain about this one. You can use streaming services as Tidal, as Qobuz. There are many other third-party apps that you can install. If you don't like to use the EverSolo app, then you can use Tidal Connect directly from your smartphone. You can use Spotify Connect, you can use AirPlay, you can use DLNA, and there are many other features. You can even install third-party apps as Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, Deezer, and many more, widening its use cases and transforming it into an outstanding music streamer without the need of a PC or a Roon server. If Roon is your thing, then it will work as a Roon endpoint via a wireless or wired connection. Just make sure to have a Roon server installed first. I tried it wirelessly and my Roon server saw it immediately, and in no time I started streaming music via Roon, which is so convenient to use and control. If you are wondering what's inside it, first of all, this is a very complex unit, so it's not just a wireless or wired streamer. It's so much more. It has an outstanding DA converter inside. It uses two ES9038 Q2M mobile chips of ESS Technologies, which are working together with two crystal clocks for a lower jitter and noise. Its preamp stage, it's active. It uses several OPA op amps and discrete components as diodes and resistors, so its preamp should perform really nicely. It has several analog relays from Omron, which usually can be found in dedicated preamps, so that is already a very good starting point. The latest XMOS receiver is on board, which automatically unlocked MQA playback. It has a flagship Bluetooth receiver as well, unlocking some of the nicest Bluetooth codecs as aptX HD and LDAC. And since it has three wireless antennas working as boosters, it never lost a beat working as a Bluetooth receiver or as a wireless streamer. Besides being a DAC, preamp and streamer, you can also make it a music server, but for that you'll need to install an M.2 SSD up to 2 TB in size, controlling your music collection with the EverSolo app. Alright folks, this is pretty much it. Let's check how it actually performs in a headphone and stereo setup. Before talking about its performance, let's zoom out just a little bit and let's talk about its feature set. I'll remind you that this unit costs below $900. It's feature packed to its teeth, and honestly, the component selection is really top notch. You have Nikon caps, you have Vima Reds, you have Omron analog relays, you have the best and the latest XMOS receiver, you have two ESS Sabre DACs working in a fully balanced configuration, and you have an active preamplifier stage. You also have a 6-inch smartphone bolted into its body. You can install plenty of third-party apps, and you can control all that goodness via that EverSolo app installed on your phone, via its touchscreen or via Roon for maximum convenience. I tried every possible scenario and I tried pushing it to its limits. I tried that EverSolo app, Roon, its touchscreen, but no matter how hard I was pushing it, it always moved fast. I've got no errors, no bugs, so everything moves and behaves exactly as a high-end device. Something that usually is not happening with units costing below $1,000. Now, I'm testing plenty of DACs around here. You probably know about that. Many of them are costing way above this price point, and yet their feature set is limited just to digital filters, enabling or disabling preamp control, volume control. Even without listening to this one, I see a lot of value with this one. And if you care for the future of hi-fi, then this is a very good place to start your adventures. It has sincerely all and everything, and it won't blast a hole in your pocket. I tried its DAC section first, followed by that Chord Electronics Ultima 3 preamplifier and Ultima 5 power amplifier, driving my KEF reference free loudspeakers that you can see behind me. It sounded very, very close to its bigger brother EverSolo DAC 8, very similar to SMSL SU10, but without that mean and ballsy attitude. To my surprise, it was providing plenty of information, so it's quite a resolving sounding unit. It's quite a neutral sounding unit, having just a pinch of added bass amp, which I personally like. So it's not going into that ultra-linear, dead neutral, almost cold territory, but it chooses to be resolving without becoming boring or emotionless. It performed on the same level with mid-fi DAC sitting in between $500 and $1,000, so it was clean, resolving, everything was nicely briefing, it was adding plenty of layers in the bass, it was easily expanding or shrinking the soundstage depending on the music that was being played. So I was getting every sign a really nice sounding hi-fi DAC should have. It was tightly controlling the drivers of my loudspeakers, but it was not as grippy as their EverSolo DAC 8, which was slightly better, but the difference was so small that personally I wouldn't use third-party DACs with this one. I do believe its DAC section is already good enough. Now, tonality-wise, this one again sounds very, very similar to that EverSolo DAC 8, so it's neutral with just a pinch of added bass oomph and texture and so on. So the bass feels a little bit elevated, it's a little bit more powerful, but personally I like this kind of sound, which makes it a little bit fun, alive, as opposed to boring or too neutral. Getting more bass quantity-wise, but less bass quality, and I do believe that's all right. It didn't lack body or emotions in the mid-range. It had a long decay in the mid-range, so I had all the time to appreciate all those vocals but at the same time, I cannot call it as warm, sweet, or creamy sounding in the mid-range. I do believe that their EverSolo DAC Z8 was slightly better, mostly because it has more discrete components, a beefier output stage, and a linear transformer, which directly impacts the naturalness of the sound. The treble output was clean, resolving, very extended, but at the same time I didn't hear any kind of digitus. It was not bright sounding. I didn't get any kind of listening fatigue, and it performed again pretty much similar to that EverSolo DAC Z8 in this regard. I went through several rock and metal albums, and instead of scratching my eardrums, I was toy tapping and headbanging, mostly because it was providing an enjoyable listening experience. When I removed that Chord Electronics Ultima 3 preamplifier, the sound got thinner, it lost some weight, it lost some magic, it wasn't as engaging anymore, but at the same time I'm comparing a mid-fi all-in-one unit with a dedicated preamplifier costing 8 grand, so it's not really a fair comparison. In its defense, I'll say that its preamp stage is not bad at all. The stage was not collapsing on my head. The transients were not really slowing down, so it was still very fast sounding. And I do believe that it performs more like a mid-fi preamplifier, very comparable to that Tapping Pre-90, which sounded more or less the same. I got no pops, no crackles, no noises whatsoever when going much louder. So it's a noiseless sounding unit with my loudspeakers. I've got a perfect channel balance at low volumes and very high volumes, so it works really great. And I don't see the reason of using a dedicated preamplifier with a unit like this. Once again, it impressed me with its preamp stage as much as it impressed me with its DAC section. Lastly, I wanted to try it as a wired and wireless streamer connected to several third-party DACs, and this is where it impressed me the most. You can connect basically any third-party DAC via its USB connection, coaxial output, and optical output. In my case, I used 2 DACs, and those were Chord Dave and Rockna Wavedream Signature, which sounded better via USB, much better versus their own USB connections connected to a PC, for example, and the difference wasn't really small. I used Cobos, I used Tidal Connect, I used this one as a Roon endpoint, wirelessly sitting 15 meters away from my Roon server, and it worked just outstanding. I never got a hiccup or something like that, something that was happening with the Gold Note DS10 Plus, but it has just one antenna. Never happened with this one because it has 3 antennas which are working as signal boosters. Now, I have this one for more than a month because I wanted to have a better grip over its performance. I wanted to find all those bugs, cons and so on, but I'm sorry, I didn't find them. I tried that EverSolo app plenty of times. I tried it as a Roon endpoint. I tried that UI many times, but it was simply flawless in my case. Besides the DMP-A6, I also have by my side a Zidu Neo Alpha, which goes for 3 grand, and a much higher end unit, which is called Rockna Wavedream Net, which goes for 10K. This one didn't approach really that Rockna Wavedream Net. That one plays in a league of its own. But honestly, this one was so damn close to that Neo Alpha, almost undistinguishable, making this one a true bargain of a unit. I have tried in the past quite a few entry to mid-level streamers, but all of them had weird apps. They were getting some lag, some hiccups. I needed to restart those units sometimes. But most importantly, those sounded quite thin, quite lifeless, something that is not happening with this one. To me, DMP-A6 is considerably livelier, it's more fun in a way, and of course it's much more engaging. And I decided using this one as a Roon endpoint in my stereo setup from now on. Wrapping things up, I didn't like that a physical remote control was not included in the package. Some might get sad that it doesn't have a headphone jack, but I can complain about that. Instead of an I to S output, they provided an HDMI audio output, meaning that I cannot use the best digital input of modern DA converters. Apart from this, its DAC, preamp, and streamer sections worked above my expectations, and I don't believe you can do better at this price point, easily winning my highest award and my stamp of approval. This is pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, for supporting. This is Sando, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!